I'm going to go a little bit more quickly now through the rest of the objections. So for duty theories, one of the standard objections is that these tend to be a bit too strict and uncompromising. So to give you a famous example, Immanuel Kant said that it's always wrong to lie. And his reason for saying this was that lying always violates the categorical imperative. Remember, the categorical imperative says in its first formulation that we should only act from maxims that we can will for every other human being to act from at the same time that we're acting from them. And if that's the standard of morality, then lying is always immoral, because anytime we lie, we can't want for every other person to be lying too, because then our lies wouldn't be believed. What the liar needs to want is they have to want for everybody else, or at least most other people, to tell the truth, but they themselves are going to break the rule and are going to lie, because that's the only thing that's the only scenario where the person they're lying to might actually believe what they're saying. And that's what they, of course, want to happen. That's what it is to lie, is to say something untrue and want the other person to believe that you actually do believe what you're saying. So, by Kant's own standard, lying is always wrong. Now, let me give you a case where most of us would say, I think lying is not wrong. So suppose that the police are at your door and you happen to know that this police force is particularly corrupt and not to be trusted. And they ask, is so-and-so, let's say John, at your house? And John is at your house. You're hiding John at your house. And John, or you have very good reason to believe John hasn't done anything wrong. And if the police get a hold of John, they're going to torture him and kill him. I'm sorry that my examples sometimes used are so horrible, but they're just examples. So the police are going to torture this person if you turn them over. Should you lie to the police? Should you say, no, John's not here, or should you tell the truth? Well, famously, Kant considered a case very similar to this one, without maybe some of the details, like the torturing part, but police at the door looking for an innocent person, and they ask you, is that person here? And Kant says you have to tell the truth in this case, because you always have to tell the truth, according to Kant, because lying is always immoral. So Kant says there may be other things that you can do to try to fix the situation other than lying to the police, but morally you can't lie. You can't lie ever, including lying to the police. Now, if I ask you, at home watching this video, think to yourself, would I lie to the police in this circumstance or not? Which do I think is the right thing to do? I think most of us would say we should lie to you should lie to the police in this case. Try to protect John. The police don't, you could say the police don't have a right to know this. The police, this group of police don't have a right to know this. But what you've done there is you've taken an exception to the rule that's supposed to be a universal obligation not to lie. So you've already kind of made an exception to what at least Kant's duty theory recommends. And a lot of duty theories have this problem that, if you take there to be a definite set of rights that are really the guidelines for morality, then you often will find cases where continuing to respect those rights or those obligations will lead you to do stuff that you and I would agree isn't the best thing to do in that circumstance. So a lot of people have thought that these rights-based theories are too strict and uncompromising for this reason. One more example of a kind of rights-based theory that runs into these problems is theories that really emphasize property rights. So there are cases, you can imagine cases where, say, one person owns a lot of food, they have like a big garden, and another person is starving, and their children are starving. And is it wrong for the person whose children are starving to steal something from the garden of the person who has plenty of food? And I think a lot of us would say in some circumstances it's hard to say that it's wrong to steal in order to meet basic. If you've tried all other routes to feed yourself and your children and you can't, it seems like it's not it's the right thing to do if necessary to steal to try to feed your children. But if property is an inviolable right, and if it's just always something that people have a right to, and they have a right not to have it taken from them by force, then or by in some way that they haven't given their permission to, then stealing is always wrong, and then this particular action of stealing to feed oneself is wrong. So again, it seems like maybe the rights-based theories are a bit too strict and uncompromising about things like this. And another problem is that it's sometimes hard to say what is the foundation for specific rights and duties. Kant tried to provide such a foundation with the categorical imperative. It's probably one of the strongest defenses of why people's rights and obligations are precisely what they are, because it's built on a kind of idea of fairness and of recognizing a basic kind of equal worth of human beings, which seems to be a pretty compelling argument, I think, to us. But it's even having accepted that kind of basic Kantian strategy of argument about what our rights and obligations are, there's a lot of room for argument about exactly what those rights and obligations should be, and it's sometimes hard to escape a sense of arbitrariness in how Kant or other people decide what those rights and obligations are. So here's an example using the lion case. Some people have tried to defend Kant's view in regard to the corrupt police at your door example by saying, well, actually, we should formulate our rights in such a way, and the police's rights to, people's rights to have the truth told to them in such a way that we recognize that when someone is corrupt, like the corrupt police, that they no longer have a right to the truth. They no longer have a right to be told the truth. The problem is that it's really hard to tell what standard should, it's hard to tell what precisely the line should be between when someone has a right to be told the truth and when they don't, or when someone has a right not to be lied to and when they don't, or when someone has an obligation to tell the truth and when they don't. It's really hard to have a principled reason for why you draw the line where you do, as opposed to just kind of looking at case after case and kind of thinking, oh, what would I do in this circumstance? It seems like we often have strong feelings looking at case after case, but it's hard to come up with a principled rule as to why the rights and obligations begin and end exactly where they do. And so this becomes a problem for duty-based theories as well. And then finally, virtue theories have a couple of problems. One is that they can vary widely by personal judgment or culture. If you ask, what exactly is it to be a good human being? There's a lot of disagreement about that, and particularly across cultures. So Confucius, I mentioned, I think, is sometimes classified as a virtue theorist, but Confucius's virtue theory emphasizes things like humility and constantly learning and trying to improve oneself and serving one's superiors. And Aristotle's virtue theory says very little about humility or about serving one's superiors. It emphasizes other things like courage and temperance. So it seems like the particular virtues that are emphasized in a virtue theory often are heavily informed by the culture that the virtue theorist is from, and that those cultures can differ in terms of what virtues they value, which raises the question of what is it really to be a good person? Is being a good person something that really varies from culture to culture? And then that makes it hard to apply. If that's true, that makes it hard to apply virtue theories in a more universal or general way. And another problem with virtue theories is that they seem to, they may be problematically focused on the self. If you look at duty theories and consequentialist theories and compare those to virtue theories, duty theories seem to really emphasize what other people's rights are and respecting other people's rights, respecting other people's equality or being fair to other people. Consequentialist theories seem to very directly emphasize particularly utilitarianism, very directly emphasize the pleasure and pain that would be felt by others affected by one's action. So with consequentialist theories, oneself, one the person acting is just one being among the great number of beings that might be affected by their actions. So they count themselves just as really just one individual among many individuals that would be affected by their actions and that need to be considered when they decide what to do. Whereas virtue theories are, unlike duty theories and consequentialist theories, very focused on like being or becoming a good person oneself, which means that in terms of the theory, they're much more self-directed than the duty theories or the consequentialist theory. They seem to be much, in a way, I mean, it's a little touchy. They're not necessarily selfish in the sense that they're saying that one should behave selfishly, but the content of the theory is very focused on the individual self, and that has bothered some people in terms of where the focus should be in an ethical theory.